Hey guys, back here again, and I have been struggling for a while now to make a coherent video on this topic, but let's continue the noble attempt. This will be a video response to IchibanPuroresu on his video basically summing up the divide that exists between the hardcore ProRes fans and the fans of USA Indies and Dragon Gate. And his video was not so much a supporting of either side, but merely a summary of the point of view of the ProRes fans, because it doesn't really get a lot of good representation on YouTube. I'm going to basically respond to his video by answering his questions directly. I do fear that that approach might result in me leaving some stuff out that I want to mention, but to do the video any other way would result in me rambling in a way that is incoherent and just not the way I want this video to turn out. So let's get started. His first question was, how do I see myself as a fan? Often I think there needs to be a real draw for me to check out something new. I mean, there are people on here who have delved so deep into the US Indies that it would blow your mind, and it blows my mind on a consistent basis. There are people who have checked out AAW, AIW, Jersey All Pro, WXW in Germany, just stuff that I still feel little desire to watch because there's nothing really different that catches my eye about some of these promotions. You know, I'm actually going to take it that step further and admit that my exposure to PWG has been and continues to be extremely limited for that same reason. That said, I have been compelled to look at a handful of shows from this year because of the absolutely rave reviews they have been getting, to a point where I can't ignore the fact that there's a quality product out there that is putting on show after show of awesome stuff, but at the same time, until they come out and say, this is what we can offer you that no other company can, I'm still not going to follow the product on a show-by-show basis. That's not what I want to do. You know, Ring of Honor retains interest because of where it is on the US indie scene. Like many others, my first excursion outside of WWE and TNA was a Ring of Honor show, and I still consider myself a fan of the product. And Chikara is clearly different. You know, you have Chikara. They got me to watch because they presented themselves in a way that is clearly different. I liked what I saw, and I stayed there, no hesitation. So that's how you do it. And I started watching more ProRes because that's a whole other world of wrestling with a lot of different things going on. The main difference being that here you have a quality wrestling product that is based on in-ring action, backed up by sold-out crowds that is comparable to WWE, who like it for that reason, and we don't have that combination on this side of the world. So that is where the difference is. And I would watch Mexican wrestling, but only the occasional big show, mostly from CMLL, because if I try to watch Lucha on a more regular basis, things soon get very repetitive. So as a fan, I would still say I'm open to anything, but there still needs to be a real selling point for me to check it out. And I'm not just talking about a great match. To a degree, I might be talking about a superstar that I like, or a wrestler that I like, because I have used that mentality for several DVDs and shows from different products. The most recent example being the Bryan Danielson independent wrestling appearances that took place over the summer. But that still might not be enough for me to really become a true fan of the product. So when I say check it out as well, I mean give money to the product. So there is that. That's kind of how I see myself as a fan. Are you a fan of the indie style? I'm going to veer off this question just a little bit by giving my interpretation of what the indie style tries to present, because I think that even though the biggest group of WWE haters that you will ever find are the TNA diehard fans, I still think that mainly ROH and maybe some other indies to a degree retain a real fuck you WWE feel to them. It might not be as obvious as it is with TNA, and ROH fans definitely aren't as vocal with the WWE hate as TNA fans are, but when Ring of Honor fans see the inconsistent career that CM Punk has had in the WWE, when they see that Evan Bourne hasn't really been given a chance to shine, and when they see that Daniel Bryan has been fired for choking an announcer with a tie, they look at Ring of Honor and they say that this is how it should be. And I think that Ring of Honor harnesses that by presenting a style of wrestling that is just so completely different from the WWE, that it just represents that kind of fuck you WWE atmosphere that I talked about before, you know, because it is fast paced, it is high impact, there is a lot of stuff going on, and that's all the things that we do not associate with the WWE style. You know, Progress is clearly different as well, but it doesn't really stand out quite as much as what Ring of Honor does. And I guess you can bracket PWG in that category as well. Chikara is a little bit different because it's not really their goal to say fuck you to anybody, but they still do family entertainment way better than the WWE does, so there is that. And I think I do appreciate the indie style for that reason, because I do feel some of the same frustrations with the WWE. You know, I mean, if the WWE if they changed to a point where they were building consistent stars consistently, I should say, and if they were having memorable feuds, if they had a place for quality wrestling every so often, I would be more than happy to watch them on a more continual basis than I have been, and I would be a lot happier as a fan because that is the most accessible product out there. So there is that. That's kind of how I feel about the indie style and why I kind of like the indie style for that reason. How do you appraise matches? I think I do look for more than just the action that goes on. I think if you have looked at my last few reviews, I think I've clearly factored in how the story of the match appears in my mind. The thing is, though, I think there are occasions where the moves and the way the moves are delivered can service the story of the match, because I think the best wrestler can factor in his moves with his character and become the total package where everything kind of blends together, you know, become really unique in that respect. And I will admit, I don't think that there are enough guys in Ring of Honor that are like that, with that kind of individuality. I don't think Tyler Black had that. I don't think the current Ring of Honor champion has that, which is very unfortunate. They don't have as many guys like that as they used to, but there's still examples of that. And when things click together the way in that sense, that to me is where it's unfair to judge the indie style as just being based on moves and spots and all that stuff. I mean, if you look at the blood feud that Kevin Steen and El Generico have been having this year, and when you look at their first singles match, Death Before Dishonor, that's very much, you know, the high impact indie style of match that we've been talking about, but they've brought the hate. They've succeeded in that aspect of it, and so the sick moves and the spots, they work. They fit in with the style of feud that they have been having, and the style of match works in that respect, I think. You know, that to me is what promotions like Ring of Honor should strive to accomplish all the time. Do they as much as they should? No, they really don't, and that's kind of a problem, but it's important to point that out before you write off the indie style as just too over the top and too lacking in storytelling, I think. So that's kind of my stance on how to appraise matches, and a little way on how to appraise the indie matches. And that kind of leads me into the wrestler individuality thing, kind of leads me into the next question, which is based on how I feel about certain wrestlers. He actually gave me a few here. Do you think guys like Ibushi, Doi, Richards, Omega and Tyler Black are grossly overrated? Basically, when talking about Ibushi and Doi, this goes back to what I said about wrestler individuality. I'm still waiting for them to show me what it is about them that makes them stand out against all the other guys in the junior heavyweight mold that are not just in Japan but in the US Indies as well. You know, you could probably make the argument that they have similar talent to Marufuji, but someone like Marufuji, but to me Marufuji will always be better, because in my mind he just has a lot more natural charisma that makes his matches feel better. You know, I'm still waiting for what Ibushi and Doi, what's different about them, and for that reason I would think that they're just okay as talents. Anyone who's trying to say they're anything amazing to me is giving them too much credit. So you can probably say that I do think they're kind of overrated in a sense. Davey Richards. I'm pretty sure I've said this before about Davey Richards. I think the guy delivers his moves with such intensity, and he just makes his matches feel so important for that reason, even though he doesn't have as scientific and as varied a moveset as someone like Bryan Danielson or Nigel McGuinness. So I really can't say he's overrated, because he does do a good job of making himself stand out in a saturated indie scene where it is kind of hard to do that at times. So I would say no to Davey Richards as far as being overrated. Kenny Omega. I think he makes an effort to stand out as well, and I definitely appreciate that about him. But if there are people that are claiming that he can have a good match with anybody, that to me is giving him too much credit, because I've talked about before how I think that Kenny Omega has a style that it kind of makes his matches lack chemistry depending on who he's in the ring with. You can definitely have a tremendous match with some people, but not everybody. So that's kind of my stance on Kenny Omega. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this when I gave my rating to Devitt and Omega a few videos ago. So that's kind of my stance on Omega. And Tyler Black. I would have no problem saying that Tyler Black is overrated if it weren't for the fact that so many of the indie fans shit all over him. You know, like I said earlier in this video, I don't think he's the total package that he should be, but to treat him like he's terrible and that he sucks is just so ridiculous in my mind. And that kind of leads me to your next question, which is, do you think that they are unfairly treated? To which I would say absolutely. You know, if someone, even though some of them aren't, I think get too much credit, I would still class everybody that you listed as being at least okay as an overall talent, as being at least competent in what they do. For anyone to say that they're terrible, to me, is a completely unfair assessment. You said that it might be a result of them being so warmly received by certain sections of fans, and I agree with that. You know, it's probably part of it, but to still shit all over them, I think, is just needless and ridiculous. So that's kind of my short but effective response to that question. And your final question was, is it fair to criticize promotions like Ring of Honor, PWG, Dragon Gate USA as being too heavily focused on moves, near-fall spamming, and spots? I think I've always sort of answered this question, to be honest. I think it's fair to call out indie promotions for failing to present the total package in their wrestlers, because I feel that when you fail to do that, that is where the indie style starts to become exposed as being too heavily focused on the things you mentioned. You know, I want to see more guys like Kevin Steen, El Generico, Davey Richards, the Kings of Wrestling. There's probably several Chikara guys that I would put in that category as well. I don't think the indie scene has enough of those guys right now that have the total package going on for them. You know, people have been saying that sort of stuff about some of the newer indie talents that have been in Dragon Gate USA and Evolve, which I have still yet to check out. Guys like John Moxley and guys like that, you know, which I'm not as familiar with as I would like to be. But those are the sort of guys that make the indie style work, in my opinion. You know, the original ECW was the most famous and the most successful of all the US indies that I can think of, because it had a roster just full of guys like that, you know. And I do think there's more guys like that in Japan currently. You know, that's what's made me a big fan of Shinsuke Nakamura, Hiroshi Tanahashi, even Yoshihiro Takayama to a degree, and others, because they have the total package going on, and that's what I like in my wrestlers. And I think that the indie scene currently needs more guys like that to make the style work. So that is my overall response to you. I look forward to hearing your feedback. I'm out. Later.